Okay, so now we're going to discuss the movements that we're going to be using to get onto the back once we've either initiated a turn or recognized a turn. So the first one, the most common, I picked this up again from Ryan Hall, who I can't give enough credit to in helping me develop my game. And you'll see actually Keenan Cornelius use this a lot. It's sort of the primary method of taking the back once you've achieved side control, or sometimes mount, but usually side control, and somebody has started to turn away from you a little bit, and you've managed to establish your seatbelt. So if I can get your head kind of pointed this way, there we go. So like we used the crush his face earlier to get someone to start to turn away. So once someone starts to turn away, and we manage to start to establish our chest to back connection. So I've slid my sternum from the side of your shoulder, from your deltoid, behind your scapula, where I can now prevent you from turning back into me and establish my seatbelt. This is where I'm going to pursue my chair sit. So I'm going to lift my knees off the ground, as we discussed earlier, driving you a little bit farther over, and I'm going to bring my knee up so that it's resting pretty much behind your head. And then you'll notice I've transitioned my elbow from being on the mat to resting on my thigh, and that's going to tighten up. If I'm keeping my elbow on the mat, you notice there's a lot more freedom of range of motion with your shoulder and your neck. As I bring my elbow onto my thigh, it tightens everything up, and I'm keeping my chin down as I always do. My left foot is going into base at this point. The common error here is to have your knee down, and it's going to be harder for me to drive. And also you'll notice as I do this, I'm putting some pressure on your hip with my shin, kind of keeping everything boxed in pretty tight. From here, I want to bring my leg over against your hip. A common error here is to go directly to a hook, and now I don't have full control of the bottom side of your hip, so you might be able to scoot your hip away from me and end up in the half guard. If I do a good job with my seatbelt, that's unlikely, but we really want to stack the odds in our favor here. As human beings, we're going to make a lot of mistakes in life, and if I can add up a bunch of ingredients in my favor, it's going to reduce smaller individual errors that I make. So if I don't have my foot in here, but I place it against your hip, it's going to prevent you from being able to walk your hip away from me. And then when we go into the turn, it's going to create that attachment at the hip that we were talking about with the hooks earlier. So I've got chest to back connection right now. This is going to cement my hip to hip connection. Now from here, I'm going to start to pull. And when I pull, it's important that I don't detach. I see a lot of beginners when they do this movement, they go like this. Oh. And now there's a bunch of space here that you can turn into. So I want to maintain chest to back connection. I want to keep my elbows flush. And I'm actually going to use my right leg and my right arm to a certain degree to push off, to elevate you. From here I'm rotating. Notice I'm maintaining the tension here with my foot. And I'm going to rotate you to the other side. As I do this, I'm searching for your arm. If I can get this, great. But we don't count on it. So let's assume that I don't get that. I'm going to place my feet together for a second, and then decide if I'm going to the body triangle or if I'm going to the hooks.
So why do you have your feet together there for a second, Rob?
Just because I want to make sure that as I rotate through that I'm not immediately letting go and providing you with an opportunity to step off my hooks. I want to establish the position first. I want to wait to kind of see, like once I get here, I want to wait to see, especially if I would have had my foot, a little bit more on your hip there. I want to wait to see if you're going to flail about. So I'm going to kind of step on my foot here just to start trying to move your hip around a little bit.
No, it's pretty tight.
Exactly. Whereas if I right away go like this, there is a split second where your hips are free. So I just want to get to here, decide what I'm going to do. And if I don't need the points, I'm probably going to go to a body triangle. But most tournaments require you at this point to hold the hooks for 3 seconds before you get points. It's obnoxious and it makes no sense, but the fact of the matter is it exists. So we want to get here first. Now I find myself on the weak side. I'm going to use my twister hook, bring you to the strong side, and then establish my attacks.
Can we go through that once again?
Absolutely. So again, you've chosen to turn, or I've forced you to turn. I establish my seatbelt and I get my chest. This little slide is really important, actually. If we just go back for a second. As somebody turns, making sure that you slide your chest behind so that your chin is resting on their shoulder and your sternum is behind their scapula or their shoulder blade really increases the amount of control I have to prevent you from turning. If I were here...
I feel like I could escape my hips and turn in if I really get blasted.
Exactly. So we want to make sure that we're sliding and dropping behind our opponent's shoulder. So as you turn, I drop and I place my chest behind and I come up off of my knees to keep rotating you forward. If you don't come off of your knees, this is doable. Like I used to do the chair sit like this myself, just jumping from here. But occasionally, and especially in no-gi, where there's less friction, if I don't lift you, if I don't lift my knees up and push you even farther away, sometimes when I go to hit that chair sit jump, you might turn into me. So I recommend lifting your knees off the ground. My elbow goes onto my knee, my foot comes around and tucks tight against your hip. A little element to discuss here. A lot of times people are going to bring their knee up. Exactly. When this occurs, we're going to lean away and we're going to place our shin or our foot on the hip to open this space up. It's a very, very common thing. And just to anticipate a potential question for viewers, if you can't open this space up, we're going to switch to the Kimura control and take the back from there. So that's just a quick option for you if
you're using that to pull the arm.
To pull the arm away, right. But generally speaking, I should be able to, by pushing off of my opponent, create this space where I can put my foot in and then get back to my original chair.
So it's this arm pulling underneath.
Exactly. I'm using a lever here and I'm just using a wedge to open it up like that. Now that I'm here, I'm keeping my heel tight and I'm lifting without creating detachment. Right here, coming across, stepping on my foot to make sure I anchor your hips for a second, decide if I'm going to pursue the body triangle or the hooks. Now that I find myself on that side, I move to the strong side, reestablish my hook. And again here, if you go back to a good knee-elbow connection like this and I find I'm having trouble reinserting the hook, I'm going to cross my ankles, keeping my good chest-to-back connection. I'm going to stretch you out and place my hook in like that.
That's a little bit of a spinal stretch.
Yeah, that's
hip extension.
That's a technique that I believe Pablo Popovich made popular.
Okay. And would you say this is probably the most common way to take the back at a high level?
I think so. I mean, it's probably between this one and the low hook, which we are also going to cover. Certainly a few years ago, I think this was the most common, and that the low hook has come into more prevalence at the kind of elite black belt level, but they're both very similar in nature.